All right, that is saying we're live. Let me check the old YouTubes. I think we're good to go. All right, Michael Bancroft, you are
Hello.
someone whose name, which is rare, as we said earlier, has been positive in indie comics in the
I'm
course that
glad.
I've
I'm
heard.
actually glad to hear of that. I try my hardest, but I have some haters out there. I think.
No, don't we all? They crucified Christ, right? I think we're all okay.
Well, I don't want to put myself in that category.
Well, if you start at the top and work down, it's not so
Yeah,
bad.
exactly.
But I came across your comic, The Lucent, and it impressed me. It which for for whatever my opinion's worth,
Thank
but
you.
it I want to just jump right into it, man. Of course, I want to get to know you a little bit through this, but I don't want to bore people. It seemed one of the most cinematic comics I've ever read. It kind of seemed to me like a Christopher Nolan screenplay, and I mean that in a compliment.
You're not the first person to say that,
Okay.
so there must be something there. And I do think that even though I collected comics and read, Spider-Man and all that sort of stuff when I was a kid, um, I didn't. I did. The Lucent isn't a result of that.
Yeah.
That's just a sort of a separate thing. The Lucent was a story that I'd wanted to tell for a very long time. But I was more of a into like reading books and watching movies and stuff like that. So I think you could definitely say that out of influences for the story, it would definitely be movies, cinema, more than what you would think of as American superhero style comics. 100%. Also, add to that European bande dessinée, graphic novels, and stuff like that as well. Much more of an influence. So if you picked up on that, I think that's probably a accurate thing. Yeah.
Well, that's what I've noticed first of all, and this is something Josh and I have kind of been frustrated by and struggled by. We all grew up on comics. I assume we're all around the same age, which about
Hmm.
let's say like 35 to 45, something
Hmm.
like that.
Yep.
We all lived through Image. Love
Hmm.
McFarlane, Jim Lee, all these guys. They weren't the best story writers, any of them. But the main thing I see in a lot of comics is like a resurgence for trying to go back to like that Image way of doing things. And
Yeah.
great, those were great artists. I don't think they were good storytellers, and quite frankly, I don't think some of them were good sequential artists. What I enjoyed about the Lucent is it would not be exactly what I would do as a comic, and I liked it. And those two things mean a lot to me when I see a work of art. Is it something if it's something I wouldn't do and it impresses me, that means I missed something, and that impresses me.
It didn't actually start as a comic.
Okay.
I had just had this idea from a story that came from my own personal experiences with. I'm a crazy dreamer guy, lucid dreaming and all that sort of stuff. And I always wanted to tell a story. I just never knew how to really do that. I hadn't really written a story before. We're going way back now into the 2000s. But these movies started to come out like The Matrix and a bunch of other stuff. Nolan in there as well. And I was like, all right, I see how these guys are kind of doing this. Fantasy, Dark City is another one. Fantasy, not fantasy, like real reality,
Oh,
what's all that sort of
I
stuff.
love Dark City.
Yeah, Dark City's great. And I was like, all right, I think I kind of have an idea. So I just started writing. And if anyone has ever tried creative writing seriously, you know how difficult it is. And I was terrible at it for so many years. But I was like, the story is good. I think there's something here. I just got to figure out how to write and what the story is. So I just went at it. And that stuff, I found a old it's funny, I wasn't even thinking that. I found an old, I didn't know I had this. It's so old. It's just me like scribbling. And I read this. This is the scribbles of a madman.
Is it your
Okay?
manifesto?
Yeah, it reads like it, but it was the original sort of
Yeah.
birth of the idea. Anyway, fast forward to 2013, 14. I've got much more of a fleshed out story. I've spent years studying movies more closely, story writing, how to do all that sort of stuff. But it still just wasn't landing. I think it was because, like, was I trying to write a novel? I don't really know. I was just trying to get this story down. Anyway, I was in France. My wife is French, and they have this huge bande dessinée scene over there. They have them, like, I was in a supermarket, and there was these things here. They look like this. This is the hardcover, version of my story. And I opened it up, and it was like a lightning bolt, because I'd never seen anything like that. To me, comics were superhero stuff, spandex, and you get a little bit of Punisher here and there, but it was mostly that same look. And I was like, I'd never seen anything like it. And what I saw was my story on a page in comic book form. And I was like, this is it. And I was like, I have to figure out a way to get my story into this format. Really, that's what I did. I just jumped right in. Luckily, I already had a kind of background in art. So, but, taught myself a little bit of how to draw comic book stuff. So that's why I think it probably hits a bit different. I probably got into it in a completely different way than anyone else. I never said about saying, oh, I want to write a comic. That never was the case. I never wanted to be a comic book artist. Never the case. I just have a story I want to tell. And it came at it from a kind of a weird place. So that could be an explanation as to why it lands a little bit different to what a lot of other people are doing.
So forgive my ignorance, but did you do the art for the Lucent?
I did, yeah.
Wow. What about the colors?
Yep.
Really?
Well, when I came into it, I mean, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anyone. All my friends were just, we all kind of grew up, and we fell out of comics, and so did I. I got into it. I got back into it a little bit through YouTube, but I was already sort of out. I hadn't drawn a comic book style thing since I was 14 years old, tracing Bagley, Spider-Man things. So, I was like, I jumped onto YouTube. How do you draw faces? And I just started through that. And that took about 6 months to sort of practice. And I got it pretty quickly again, because I've kept up with art and stuff like that, just for my own interests. Just sort of, all right. And then, well, where do people even do comics these days? It's not like I can go to a publisher and say, hey, I've got an idea. Do you want to invest all this money in I didn't think that was a possibility. So I found webtoons and online web comics and stuff like that. It's like, all right, so you can just go online, post them online, and that's what I did. And that's how it all started.
That's very impressive, man, because the first thing that struck me from your book before I'd read it was the colors. And it is almost, pun intended, night and day difference from modern comics. Modern comics have this, to me, very oversaturated. Everything looks like sunset, and there's random light sources and shiny things everywhere, and I don't like it. When I saw yours, I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks more. And you kind of said it yourself. This looks more like a French book from back in the day, and the color and the timeline, especially the idea of the lucent, the dreaming, and this kind of thing. It had more of a nighttime kind of city feel, and I don't know if that's a difference because you're from your accent, I would guess you're Australian.
That is correct.
Okay. I don't know if y'all cities are different, but apparently all the cities here, according to comics, are as bright as daytime for some reason. But the cities you were drawing actually look like nighttime, and I was like, oh, this is a nice refresher from what we usually get in comics.
I think I definitely got that from the cinema. Definitely 100%. I love cinematography. I'll watch movies purely for that. And I'll sit through them and I'll just be in awe of it. I think, that stuff is amazing, and they're super professional. These are like the best people in the world, some of them, who do their stuff. So I was just like, why would I try and rewrite the wheel when they're already just making amazing imagery? And there's movies like that are out there that's like every single frame you could pause it and it would be like a Caravaggio painting. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I always wanted to do. And I agree. I'd never liked the I'd say I never liked. I never wanted it for my book. I never wanted for my book that basic, normal colors, the sky's blue, people of that and everything look. I did want to have if you think back to, I think it was Lord of the Rings were the first one who did very prominent color grading, where they would and if you watch the making of documentary, yeah, they were color grading scenes based on what was happening in the scene, the emotion that they were trying to get through. So it's like, I want to do that. And
It's
that's
very
one of the
German, kind of like German existentialist films back in the day, expressionist films.
I'm not going to pretend to be like a film expert. If you're going to pull out, like strange names, I'll just sit here glassy eyed. I'm sort of known for
I'm not
being
either.
pretty ignorant
Oh, me
about
too.
a
That's
lot
what my Twitter's for.
of stuff. But it's something, it's feedback that I've received a lot, which is greatly appreciated. Is I can see, they say to me, I can see you're trying to tell a story with the colors.
Yeah.
And that's 100% true. I've recolored entire scenes. So like the walls, for example, because I'm like, no, they should be red, because this is a dark, dangerous scene where, people are getting killed and stuff. So it should be red, and it should be kind of ominous. And these are the reasons why I pick colors. And it's the same thing that they do in film as well. They do the same thing, all the masters do. So I'm just sort of following their lead.
Well, that's another thing that older comics, I think, got right, is sometimes the backgrounds, there would just be these splashes of color. They had nothing to do with the room itself. It was all to convey emotion.
Yep.
And it threw realism out of the way. It's like, no, we don't need consistency. We don't need realism. I don't care if there's wood panel here 1 second. Now the guy's screaming. Now the background is red or blue or green or something. And you're right. They kind of read more like film. And that's the main thing. I'm not trying to reiterate, but that's the first thing that hit me. I was like, and this guy clearly is into film, like, and is into art and has an eye for things. I didn't know you were the artist at the time, but what has really impressed me in this conversation now, because I'm a writer and I can't draw a stick figure, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have learned writing comics, which I'll go into that story in just a second, is how much space you have to give the artist. And
Yep.
that's what's really amazing me about guys like yourself that can write and draw it, because you're having to code switch between writer and artist as you're writing, and then as you're editing, and as you're drawing, I assume.
Yep.
And I can imagine you editing the script in your head as you're drawing it.
It definitely, it's a who said this the other day? Phil Diaz said this the other day, and I was like, man, that is so right. It's like ad lib. What I imagine anyway. I've never done it. Like, you get up on stage and you're just, bouncing off things. You're bouncing off each other when it's happening, and you don't quite know until it's happening. So that's exactly how it is. So I've done it 2 ways now, because I do, on the book that I'm selling now, that I'm working on right now, I did hire an artist. And it's like it's a side. I want to add in like supplemental side books and stuff,
Nice.
to the story. So I thought for them, I'll have artists. So I'll do the main story, and then artists will do the shorter comic ones. And so I've seen both sides of it now. Normally, what I do when I write is I know the timeline of events that the story the book will take place in, and I just sort of get into my head and walk through the scenes visually in my head. And the characters to me are so real. They just kind of like do their thing, and I just watch them and kind of like, okay, that's good. And then I just quickly write all that down, and that gives me enough to draw. So then, all right, now I can hit the page, I can start drawing, lay it out. And I have what they said written down, but that can change throughout the entire process. And I do find that, yeah, you get the best writing, dialogue, narration, whatever it is, after you can see the art, because then you're actually seeing, you can pull in visual clues, you can draw in metaphors that are in the art that you didn't even really realize were there until they're there. And yeah, it makes the whole thing so much richer. So it is definitely very much an ongoing process.
That's what I've been trying to articulate for a while, and I'm not trying to use you as a soundboard, but I try to use all my guests as a soundboard because that's why we talk, right? But it seems to me that we have forgotten that the kind of the comic greats, just to keep it to this medium for right now before we jump
Mhm.
off, did not come from comics. They came from things like film and pulp and novels. Think they read, they ingested other art,
Yep.
and they created this monumental reality in this world that then basically over time eventually got so derivative. It's comic people making comics that grew up reading comics.
Mhm.
And when you do that, uh, the medium calcifies, and
Mm.
that's what I've noticed, and that's what I think a lot has happened because I come from music, and that happens instantly with music. You can tell when someone performs something what their three favorite bands are pretty instantly, and they
Right.
haven't. And that's what really stuck out to me. Was like, I looked at your book, and then I looked at your website, and it had what we had been kind of trying to go for a little bit. And I think you had a more cohesive vision, and that's what really impressed me was that it seemed like you do have a cohesive vision of the worlds you are making. There's an
Yeah.
underlying uh, there's an underlying idea that is articulated as an aesthetic, whether I don't know if you meant to or not, and that's what I wanted to ask you to ask you if it was intentional
It's
or not.
it wasn't pre-envisioned. It has come about organically,
Yeah,
but it is something that I absolutely do um shoot for. That's what I'm aiming
yeah.
for, essentially.
It didn't hit me like a store, and that's something I hate is when I go to like an artist website and it feels like it's a guy selling something. When I went to yours, I was like, this feels like an artist trying to tell me a story.
That's perfect because that's exactly that's my whole thing. That's always been my whole thing. I have a story to tell. I think it's a great story. I'm working on it, as I go. Come along, and if you want to be a part of it, I'm happy to have you. So that's awesome that you got that, and it's definitely something. It is the website as well is a massive work in progress too.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that I want to build into it as well. Originally it started as a sort of answer to what I wasn't really happy with how the crowdfunding things were panning out. But it has to kind of build it, evolved into something a lot more. That's cool. That's good feedback. I mean, I have a graphic design background. That's my day job.
Ah, okay.
So I have these skills already that I can,
That was
feed
going to be
into
my
these
next
things.
question. Is like, are you a photographer or a graphic design? Or both? Because I could sense like the
Yeah,
way you frame things is one of those worlds.
I have a pretty how would you describe? I've done a lot of things.
That sounds like you're a criminal.
No, well,
That's an Italian mob boss
I was a
answer.
gambler. I was a gambler for a little while. I lost my
Okay.
job. I lost my graphic design job after the financial crisis,
Mm-hmm.
2008, and I became a professional gambler for a while. Until we had our first kid, and I was like, all right, I gotta, I don't want to have any bad months while I've got a baby I need to feed, so
No sharks coming around to break your legs.
thankfully I didn't get into any of that. I'm a good gambler. I made good money. But no, like I've done lots of things. I did a t-shirt company. I did t-shirt competitions and stuff. I did I did a skate zine back in the day.
Oh, that's cool.
Just lots of different things. And it's a pretty amazing, obviously this was not planned. Even the poker, even the gambling for a living, all of the, and I'm probably forgetting things that I did. All of the things that I've done, I get a skill from that is perfect for making indie comics.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing pre-press for 25 years in my day job now. And that's just a skill that I picked up along the year over the decades. That's perfect. People come to me now, they say, can you help me with your pre-press? And I do, I help them out. But this is so many different things that go into making comics, selling comics. I've made websites. So it's all these things that came together. Oh, the t-shirts. Yeah, I sell t-shirts now, Lucent t-shirts through the site.
saw
And
that.
they're the best t-shirts because I know how to make cool t-shirts and I know where to go. I know what's good and know what isn't, you know? So it's like, it was really weird that all this stuff that I did, which seemed very random and whatever, it all kind of led towards having a unique set of skills.
I'm just glad
That
you
would allow you to make
specified.
comics.
I'm just glad you specified it was poker you were gambling in, because it's like it's Australia. I didn't know if you guys were like things like kangaroo boxing or who could grab the snake the fastest.
No, we play an old bush game called Two Up, which is illegal to play
Right.
except for one day. It's so weird. There's a very old law. And one day of the year, it is legal to play Two Up and gamble for it. It's weird. Anyway, no, it was poker. I think poker is probably the only gambling you can actually make a living doing. Everything else is just, gambling.
Okay. I was making sure you weren't boxing kangaroos or something.
No, I'm not that tough.
What's the name? Art and Times of Jay Ryan says, "Hey, Bancroft."
Hello, Jay.
Also, hello, Dan. What's up,
Some
dude?
familiar faces in there.
And I didn't want to forget you, Crenshaw. I'm coming back to you. Crenshaw said, "I've had maybe 15 dreams that I remember. Every other night of my life, I'm swimming deep in the ether."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that brings you to the next thing. I'm really glad you went with this concept of your book, because, again, I'm not trying to get to whatever, but this is our show. This is why we're here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So many, especially modern, and this isn't just comics, it's shows, comics, everything, books, everything is either strictly materialist or some kind of urban fantasy. Your book seemed very primal. It seemed like it had a respect for the past and it had a respect for the supernatural in a way that comics and stories used to have. What I read, and this is what is really interesting to me about it, was that you had just enough of an urban setting in it for it to feel like it was weird.
Yeah.
And that's what really, again, that's another thing that you threaded the lines really, really well. That made me mad that I didn't do that.
I know that feeling so well, where you read a story and you're like, oh, why didn't I do that? That's so cool. No, I love that. That's good. That's cool to hear that you had that on my story, because I have that feeling all the time when I read other people's books. So that's good. You're exactly right. I do love that juxtaposition between the real world, our world, and the fantastical world, and the world of history, which is in and of itself, pretty fantastical if you look into it. And I was just, it was just always something that I wanted to have in a story. And I had this premise, this idea, and the idea is, what if dreams are this gateway to some hidden power or knowledge, whatever,
Like a
that
collective
we just
unconsciousness.
exactly that we have either that we don't know about, but more interesting, I think, is we as a civilization have forgotten about it, or maybe most of us have, but there are a select few who still do know and who are kind of guarding it for themselves. So they'll automatically, oh, there's a story here, there's something to work with here. And that's sort of what it blossomed out of. But yeah, I love grounding it in reality for lots of different reasons. I think it makes for really cool things. I like stories that do that. But on top of it, it like pulls us in. When I read a story like The Lucent, I want the reader to think, oh, this could be actually happening right now. I'm just not aware of it, because it's set in my world, and I recognize a lot of the things. And I made sure that every character from history in The Lucent was an actual real person or mythological person, don't really know, sort of thing. So they're actually based on real things that you can look for. The places that are mentioned, you can look for the gods or historical people. They're real. So like, oh, maybe this is just the truth about what happened, so it really just adds so much more interest, so much more fun. And I don't know if you're into this stuff, but history right now is going through the most exciting revolution of, new understandings about human history, human civilization, all these sorts of things that are just like perfect for my story. So it's like it's a great time to actually be alive and have all this stuff actually come to fruition.
And unfortunately, we're living through history being made.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. Yeah, that's a kind of I tell you, it's a dark, interesting time to be alive. That's for sure.
It is. It's it is something that makes you sometimes go, what's the point of making things? What's the point of basically anything? And then you kind of realize, like, well, that is the point. Like, no
Yeah.
one history is full of people who lived through way worse stuff than we are, who did way more beautiful things. And
I had
yeah,
I had that exact thought on multiple occasions yesterday, where
yeah.
I was thinking like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
What is this? Is this, does anyone care? Why should they care when there's all this other stuff going on? But when the kind of the grieving passes and you take a longer, wider look, you're so right. In the middle of all of it, if you look back at any point in history, when people were in the middle of the worst atrocities taking place around them, people were creating, people were making, people were holding on to what makes us human. And Salman Rushdie said that of anything that humans do, of anything that humans do, storytelling is our thing. It is our unique thing that only we do, as far as we know. And it's innate. It's necessary. It's sort of how we know ourselves. So yeah, I'm not saying like you and I personally are making this thing, but storytelling in general is just such an important part of human society and us. So I'm like, all right, okay, it is something that is worthwhile doing. And it is, even though it can be hard to remember and really big events like this happen.
Yeah, it's so important. Narrative gives us an explanation for the past and a guide for the future, and it's such a powerful idea that up and only until maybe 100 years ago, and even then it had its own way of doing things. People even believe. I mean, that was the idea even of Western civilization, the logos, God becoming flesh, the word, like this undeniable reality, and the foundation was a spoken thing that you could almost create the future by telling a story of yourself as you do it. And of course, that goes into everything from religion to the esoteric to even the materialist ideologies of the 20th century. I mean, that's what Marxism basically was: this teleos of history, this idea of like the Hegelian dialectic, end of history. You're always moving towards something that's always there. It's always going to be there. You just have to push history to it through a narrative. And I think we forget all of that, all those different views of it to our detriment. And I think when we live in basically slop land where we're eating Doritos and watching some guy play games on Twitch, you're kind of killing a part of yourself as a human.
I partake in the silliness of modern
Yeah.
life, just like everyone. But it is important every now and then to kind of seek out something with a bit more depth and a bit more meaning. And when I do, it's like coming up for air and really getting a good recharge. It is important to do. And if you only just look around at what's happening out there these days, like how important narrative can be, and how much of an impact it can make on everyone's lives and civilization,
Mm-hmm.
and the future. So yeah, it is. I think it is a worthwhile thing to at least strive for something a little more meaningful, in life. I know I certainly do.
Well, that's what I found in your work, and not to tie everything too closely together, but I would be remiss if I did not do this because the timing of you being here and this week.
Mhm.
Your story. I'm not going to do spoilers for anyone who hasn't read your first book, but your story involved it hits you in the gut from the get go, and that's another kind of cinematic quality about it. There's a story of a father and his daughter, and without spoiling it, they're separated. I'll say
Mhm.
that you would not find in a lot of work because a lot. I don't know if you're a father. I don't want you to dox yourself, your family, anything
No,
like that.
everyone knows
Okay,
I have a daughter. I have a son.
okay. That has to mean something to you, and you have to know that feeling. We just saw very prominently two children lose their father in a public
Mhm.
setting, and we live in a world where that bond and that idea and that narrative and that feeling are disregarded or
Yep.
not known. And the way you started that book made me very angry because of that. In the best way, I was like, "Good Lord, this thing starts with just." And I look forward to seeing how that plays out and is resolved eventually. Um, but what impressed me most was the colors, not just physical colors, but the colors of the narrative of how you shaped it from the ancient world to that part to modern day. And you could tell there was that same feeling of like paternal love throughout it.
Mhm. Yep.
Forgive me,
It's
but how did you do this?
well, no, you are exactly right. I do feel that there are certain things that you can't really plumb the depths that you would want to unless you understand that feeling yourself viscerally, and I think
Yep.
any parent does.
Good word.
And
Viscerally, yeah.
I'll even start tearing up a little bit when I think of that um that video of her running to him.
Yeah.
um but no, it is 100% something that I wanted to be a core of her as a character, because it and in my new book that I'm coming out with, Fractured Mind, it it really delves into the ongoing effect of that event, um to her where she is now, and hints at how that is going to be a really big important part of something she personally has to overcome if she's going to you know follow the course of the story, sort of thing. I'm trying to talk around spoilers here, but
Yeah.
it's I don't know how I did it. You just I definitely
Well, in
to
that
me
case, click.
to
I just came.
me
I just came here to steal your ideas.
hold on a sec. I'm getting a I don't know what happened just there. Sorry, I had the YouTube just started there. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting a ah. I'm getting a
Well, in that case,
all right, we're good. We're good. Sorry,
yeah,
my
yeah, we're
Windows
good.
just started playing the stream. Sorry about that.
It's
I don't
all
know where
right.
I lost that. It's
I
good now.
repeat. I'll repeat. I had you here to steal your ideas, so it hurts that you can't say how you did it.
Look, the writing part of it to me is very personal. It's definitely the most personal part of the process where I kind of go inside.
Mhm.
I listen to a lot of music and I save a lot of music because I think music is like, when you smell something and a memory can come back to you like you were there from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it's
Mhm.
like you're there. To me, music is the same with that emotional connection. So I feel like if you feel that emotion and you attach it to a piece of music, save that, replay it again at any time, and you're right back in there. So I
Mhm.
use that to kind of get myself into that headspace that I need to be to tap into some of these things, that I really want to make sure they sort of land on the page.
It's funny you mentioned that. Our book that's going to come out next year or this year, Apollyon 3. I wrote completely just off Beethoven's For Elise. I usually do like a playlist or something, but
Mhm.
I understand it because like I can step away from a work, especially when you're like something you're doing that we're doing, which is a larger work, several pieces, several volumes. I can step away from even months, but put on that playlist or put on that song, bam, like
Yeah,
you're
you're
in the
right back in there.
headspace. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think it was you. We had a brief interaction with it talking about was it either you were trying to we were comparing poetry and prose,
Mhm.
and it's funny you said that because I've been thinking about that idea a lot as well, and I think in spirit prose aspires to be poetry and poetry aspires to be music. I I think that that is an understandable hierarchical order in the way
Yep.
of thinking about things. And not to push a little bit too further, but I mean, we are a weird podcast, so why not? I think music aspires to be silence in some ways, and I think silence is meditation or worship, where it is this kind of I don't want to say oneness, but it's being in tune with things that are around you that you're not actively having to seek out, things that are just there, if that makes sense.
I was never into meditation or
Hmm.
anything like that until I started learning more about the dreaming stuff.
Yeah,
And that's really one of the moments in my life where thought I decided, okay, I have to try and turn this into a story
yeah,
because um this is so unusual and it's real. And what essentially what I'm talking about is when you lucid dream, you're usually asleep and you're just going through the motions for whatever reason. Some people lucid dream more than other. I don't know what it is. um, but there's also a technique that's been known for since forever where you meditate, you sit quietly in silence, you put your physical body to sleep while your consciousness stays awake.
hmm,
It's called wake induced lucid dreaming. And I thought, I lucid dream all the time. Let's give it a go. And I was able to pull it off. And it was such a strange experience. It was like, wow, my brain is capable of this insanity. It's like a completely drug-free hallucination.
hmm,
And in that moment, I was like, holy crap, if it's capable of that, what else is it capable of? And when I say this stuff to people, people look at me like this guy's weird.
hmm,
But this is a thing that people have been doing forever,
yeah,
and it's not for everyone. I don't think everyone can do it. I don't know why. And I was like, well, that's something in and of itself too. What's going on here? And then, so that when that was like, okay, I have to somehow turn this into, you know, a story of some kind. But yeah, that's interesting what you say about music aspires to be silence, because yeah, you're right. There is something that takes place in that moment where you're kind of just in your own head
yeah.
and figuring things out that you didn't even think were in there.
Well, that's excuse me. That's the stuff I love, man. If we're gonna go, I would have a 6 hour conversation with you about lucid dreaming if we could. That I love that kind of stuff because there's something there that we can't deny. And I'm like, if you read old works, which I'm sure you have because you kind of mentioned you kind of hint to some of that in your work. This wasn't a strange idea to people for most of human history. This
Mm,
and other things like they would use the term as if in a dream a lot when they were describing seeing things, hearing things, feeling things that they couldn't believe that they were writing down. Um, and isolation was a big part of that. There's a reason that whatever religion that you go to, the prophets were almost always isolated. They were in a cave or
yep.
on a mountain or
Yep.
somewhere there, and they were alone, and they were alone a
Yep.
lot. And I think it's even I'm not a I didn't go to school for this, but I forget who it was. Maybe Ezekiel, whoever in the Bible who saw the temple being rebuilt. It's like a dream. He's moving as if like in a lucid dream. Like he's basically moving through walls and seeing people's thoughts and seeing how things move and interact, and he's seeing time kind of in a weird way.
Hmm.
And it's like these patterns repeat all over the
Yep.
world in different religions and different social structures, and we're going to pretend like it's not real.
That's exactly it. So we have it all there. You just need to go looking for it. And in our modern society, it's like society is set up to make sure you don't go looking for this stuff, and you're distracted constantly. There's no time for a quiet mind and introspection. But that's why I you're so right. That's why I wanted the history in there, because I'm not coming at this from this is new knowledge.
Mhm.
This is forgotten knowledge, or it's knowledge that people have sequestered because it's too dangerous. So yeah, but any way you look around, there's wisdom and knowledge that we have either forgotten, whether it's technology or a way of looking at the world, and it's all over the world
Mhm.
in places that you wouldn't think would have talked to each other, and they've all come to similar conclusions. Now either they have a someone before that who gave them that, or they all came to it on their own. Either way, whatever. But yeah, it's there. And it's like it's an amazing thing that we should definitely kind of reconnect with, obviously.
Yeah, and those two options you presented are two things. And I wish he was here, Josh, our artist. Um, we discussed that a lot in our work, and together it's the two options, which is either humanity had a shared origin of
Mm-hmm.
species, which is possible. We don't know if that's true or not, and one story perpetuated down, or somehow people across the entire world started somehow had the same ideas,
They
and
came
that's
to the
all.
same truth conclusion.
Yeah, and we see this way. Like, there's different pyramids all over the world. These
Mm-hmm.
different structures. There's giant or winged serpents everywhere, and things like this, like the ideas of dragons and ideas of stone monuments
There's
and things
there's
like this.
also a possibility. I know you're getting a bit kind of spiritual here, of some sort of shared collective consciousness, which
Yeah,
is another idea.
which I
That
love that idea.
Well, and amazingly, that people are trying to, scientists themselves now are kind of more open to that idea that our intuitions and our consciousness might not be what we think it is, and as separate as what we believe it is, and all this sort of stuff. So that's another really interesting thing that I do play into a bit in the story as well. Yeah, there's so much cool stuff out there that you can draw from with this sort of thing.
Well, that's what's so wonderful. And we still, either in philosophy and in science, we can't tell where ideas come from. We don't
No, we
know.
joke that they come from the ether.
Yeah,
That's what we do in my
exactly.
chat.
Or,
We just
or
pull them from the ether.
the I harp on this in our Substack a lot. The muse, that used to be an idea. It used to be
Mhm.
this thing that you had to literally appeal to, and she would come in like a spiritual feminine form and give you things in the form of like water or a written document that's like plays and you eat it, or some weird concept. But it used to be this idea that art in general and ideas were of you and not of you at the same time,
Yep.
and they were of others, and it was this weird like circular pattern. They were from others, yourself, and the divine all at the same
Do
time.
you feel that when you write? Do
Oh yeah,
you
a lot of times
and
it feels like being a medium.
100%? And I'm not really, I'm a pretty rational reasons, like evidence-based guy, but until I started writing, and I was like, damn, I mean, I feel this and I see it and I experience it whenever I write.
Mm.
And and then sometimes I get in the way because
Yeah,
I think I know best. No, I want it to be like this. But this muse or whatever, the fates are saying, no, this is how it's happened. This is how it happened.
yeah,
Right. And you're like, no, but I wanted this cool thing here. Like, no. And then you kind of butt up against each other and you're like, look, and like, this is all happening in my head. I'm just going to put this on the shelf for now, and I'm going to work on this. And almost every single time I do this, the universe provides.
Yeah.
I'll be, and it's crazy how it provides. I'll be like, I like to listen to a lot of Shakespeare and stuff like that. I just, this
Nice.
is, a hobby. I'm a fan of the word, and there's tons I don't know, but you kind of get in these rabbit holes, and then all of a sudden, I'll find a new video. Or like recently, I found this philosopher from the 70s called Alan Watts, and
Yeah.
I've been listening to a ton of his stuff, and it's crazy. So just say I'm just that the me and the muse are having an argument, and it's just not working, and then somehow this rabbit hole will lead me to Alan Watts' video, and he will articulate perfectly the solution.
Yeah.
This has happened to me hundreds of times over the last 15 years, to the point where I'm like, I feel like someone wants me to write this story at this point.
Yeah.
Like, it just keeps happening. There's a problem, I can't solve it, and then something that I've never seen before just lands in front of me, and he's like, here's a solution. And I'm like, what's happening here? It is super weird.
Well, again, that's the thing. I think what you were talking about, we've kind of, I don't think you use this term, but we've kind of castrated that part of ourselves, of our spirit or intuition or something. And it's like a weird kind of broken thing. I don't go off on topic here, but men and women, so that's not a controversial topic right now, right? Men and women used to be more extreme against and towards the other one. It really was more of, I hate to use the term, more of a spectrum throughout history. You had guys that could kill wild beasts with a stick,
Mm-hmm.
and they could also write epic poetry from their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the same guy.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like people are fighting, especially, and of course, women back then were having childbirth, and they were also working, digging through the dirt. At least my ancestors were Irish.
Yep.
So there were women probably in like the 1500s with a stronger grip than the average man now because they worked harder. But all that to say, I do think there's something in that have slowly, we've allowed ourselves to be less and less of what we were and less human. And it's bad enough we have this idea of everything's got to sell, everything, you got to make it, and you got to have a determined focus. Like everything you describe, which is a method I try to do, which is basically just time and patience and listening and being sensitive, has been cut off for profit. Put out as much crap as possible, as quickly as possible, using a system. And then that has morphed into what they're trying to push, whoever, us, we all are, society, into AI, which is the horrific nature of the existential horrific nature of that is because it's the exact opposite of what you just described. It is outsourcing not just your thoughts, but your intuition. What does it leave you as?
An automaton, really. I mean, you're just a figurehead for some algorithm, some system.
Yeah.
And I've noticed it as well. I've been playing the game now. I understand that if you want to get your work out there, you have to also build an audience and sell and all that sort of stuff. But I did notice myself getting dragged a bit too far into the system and away from the purpose of it. Like, what am I here for? I'm not here to be a big time YouTuber selling, headphones, which I have been offered. People said, do you want to sell our headphones on your shows? And I'm like, not really. No. Did you get a free pair? I'm good.
I don't use headphones.
So, so I did make a conscious decision that no, when I think of the writers, storytellers, and artists that I admire, they were very, very much focused on their work beyond anything. So, I would I'd rather take obscurity and that than the limelight. But I don't have time anymore to do what I think I need to do to make good stuff.
Well, I think with that, like let's, if you don't mind analyzing that with me a little bit, it's basically like the YouTuber idea. Basically, YouTube, a lot of YouTubers now that are on, and Twitch streamers that are on there all the time, they're there because people want them to say or do something meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
But no one even in history, greater men than anyone here, can put a camera on for 24/7 and be insightful. That's not how reality works. Yes, like, I mean, Jesus Christ had to retreat to the mountainside occasionally.
Yeah.
Gandhi had to go through the mountains. You know what I mean? Like, people,
yeah, there's like most of what Jesus did is not documented. You know, no one knows what he was doing most of the time. So
maybe having to rest to put up with people. But it's like,
and you know, I've tried that. I've tried that game of, you know, whenever an event happens, all right, you've got a show, you get on there and opine. Which is fine when it's something you're actually passionate about and interested in. But like you said, I mean, doing that regularly, eventually you just sort of run out of things. Maybe you've exhausted one topic and now you're like, all right, what else is happening out there? And what are people interested in? Oh, they're interested in that, I guess. So you talk about it and yeah, you get a good crowd, but then you realize like, there's no way I would be talking about this for myself. There's just, I'm not interested at all. And that's when you have that moment of reflection. You're like, what am I doing here? Like, I would be so much better off, you know, reading some great book and getting some kind of insight that I otherwise would have missed out on than doing this.
Yeah, it's this weird acceptance of life. Hustle culture has never existed before. There was slavery, there was like factory working, you know, there was serfdom, but that wasn't what we would call hustle culture now, like consistently having to think of something to talk about, having to think of something to do, having to make something. That was systematized awful hell. And we're seeing it now. That's what the camera has done to us now, only it's like with our mouths talking about some stupid opinion that we don't really believe. And we don't have to do it. No one's forcing you into the camera unless you're like in North Korea or something. You know? Thankfully, we're not. Actually, Australia, you guys might have it pretty bad if COVID-2 hits.
We're getting close.
Yeah,
we're getting close. Our one of our old premiers from COVID era was just over in China.
I saw
hanging
that.
out with what's his face? Yeah, no, we're getting close.
Yeah, I saw was the New Zealand lady that was like, mistakes were made. It's like,
we're all human,
okay.
you know. We tried to force you to do this and put you in camps, and you know, but you know, hey, look,
we're all cool, right?
Yeah.
So is New Zealand like y'all's Canada? Like they're Australia light?
Yeah, maybe we do have. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert on the relationship between Canada and the US, but we do definitely have a sort of a kinship there. I guess it's kind of like a big brother, little brother sort of thing. Yeah, but we're quite similar in culture, I would say.
Yeah,
you know, just they're on a tiny little island, and we're on this enormous barren land.
I'm about to say only like a small percentage of your island is usable, isn't it? It's
yeah. Well, they have 2 cities, and we have 7, and our landmass is I don't know how many thousands of times bigger. But yeah.
Well, going back to the topic, I mean, I could talk about Australia with you forever because it's a fascinating place that I know nothing about. But the ideas that I found within your book, how you orchestrated it, it was really cool, man. It was I could tell you were dropping like bits of a thread as you went in the background that you didn't even have to say. And that's what was really cool to me, is like you could see from the story itself the things unsaid that were forming to be said later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when I start my first draft, I say everything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, this is what I'm trying to get through here. So the characters will just come out and say it usually. And then when I go back, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's like, I don't want to ham feed anyone anything. I don't want anyone to ever read my books and hear me talking through a character. I don't want that. Like, they're their own people. But I do understand that with the way I'm writing it, I think of it like it's a puzzle, and I'm giving you pieces. I'm not even showing you what the puzzle's supposed to look like. The pieces might not connect, they might connect. But you collect them as the story goes, and you try and put them together as you go. I find that super fun in stories.
That's what I found very bold with your writing, was the complete lack, or the complete refusal to hold hand. Like, that is the complete opposite of modern writers that over explain everything.
Yeah, and I understand that, because it depends on what sort of story it is. Like, I was watching, my son's big into Fortnite. So I said, there's a movie that's a bit like Fortnite called Ready Player One.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in it where the characters are all just talking for the benefit of the audience. Yeah. And they're just explaining, and it goes on for like 2 minutes. And I'm just sitting there like, this is funny. But that's the sort of story it is. It's not a mystery. So you have to keep it going. You have to explain so everyone knows. That's not my story at all. No, like, I have a world, I have a timeline, and it's mostly you're seeing it from Ella's perspective, who she's like us. Like, she doesn't know anything about this. She's good at dreams, sure, but that's not, going to help her with what's coming. And I will have other characters in there. Now, they know everything, but they're going to talk to each other as though they would naturally. Mm-hmm. Like, when you meet a friend, you don't go up to your friend and say, hello, friend of 17 years who we went to high school together, and we had a, bonding experience when, you're like, that's not how you talk to people. Mm-hmm. You just slide right in. And I want to do that because when something that doesn't annoy me, I understand it's a trope of comics, but it kind of makes it not as enjoyable for me, is when everyone just accepts, oh, we live in this fantastical world where everyone does fantastical things. No, I want to present the real world. What would happen? What would happen if something batshit crazy actually happened and you saw it, or you experienced, or you lived through it? What would happen? Like, and the way to make that actually impact is for the world to seem real. There's a great TV show, and I also credit it as a major inspiration. Are you familiar with the movie Jumper?
Yes.
So they're based on a series of books that I mean to read, because they surely must be pretty cool. I don't like the movie Jumper. I like the idea. They made a side TV show called Impulse. Mm-hmm. And when I watched it, I was just like, oh my God, they're doing what I'm trying. They made a world that is so real. Like, imagine a real, gritty, super realistic drama where every now and then this girl teleports with disastrous, outcomes. And she has to deal with that in the real world. She's getting sexually assaulted. It's horrific. Someone dies. When someone dies in a TV show and you don't really feel anything, you're like, oh, that sucks. That's going to do, Someone got shot in this show. I was heartbroken because it felt real. I'm like, oh my God, I felt like I was watching a snuff film. And I was like, that is like a really interesting, dark way of telling a story like this. So, I do want to make it as real as I possibly can.
No, I think you have to. I think you do that without being nihilistic, and without being depressing, and without being deconstructionist. And I think when you do that, it makes it so when you bring in the supernatural, the supernatural, quote unquote, feels real, as in how we would react to it.
It definitely has a lot more impact. It definitely means a lot more, because in the Lucent, you've got and this will kind of come out a bit more as the story continues. There's all kinds of different levels that you can be awakened to the powers that you get from your dreams, from seemingly pretty banal stuff to basically godlike powers, and everything in between. So, you know, it needs to have impact. When someone teleports or uses water or like whatever, like that should mean something. That's special. You know, when an old seemingly frail guy can like stop someone like batting at them with a metal pole and just grab it in their hand like it was nothing, that should mean something. It shouldn't just be part of the world that everyone goes, oh yeah, whatever, because then it's not interesting, and those fantastical elements don't mean anything, and they should mean something because it's you know, a big part of the story.
Well, I think a lot of what you said, and I'm not trying to make it into this, but is a lot of the unsaid and unarticulated frustration people have with comic books becoming stale. And one of those things is just power scaling. Doesn't matter. Anybody can do anything. Wolverine can now heal from an atom. Who cares? And this idea of presenting a new idea, and this is something, if you read like older comics, if you read them in a trade, it's really annoying now. And that's not, I know that sounds like blasphemy, but it's like every issue they have to remind you what happened the last 5 issues. Because it's like, oh, you have to assume that the kid at the drugstore picked this up for a nickel and he didn't read the last. It's like so much of that it's so much internal ideas of all these things. And eventually that model, even though that was gone, was still adopted, and people still write like that, and it's still overdone. And what you just said is like, no, like what if it's kind of like a sucking the air out of the room or sucking the music back before you crash in? It's like, what if it's not a bombardment of words? What if it means something when something happens? What if it means something when someone says something? And all that to tie together is what you just said, is when an old guy stops something, it should be like, I just saw an old guy stop a sword with his hand. You know, it should be something that is unexpected and is well orchestrated, instead of just a consistent bombardment of bass and drum music. And I make that comparison a lot between our modern writing and modern music, between like a symphony where every part has meaning and it's subtle and it swells and dynamics, versus some Taylor Swift song that's just like thumping the whole time.
Going to a system. It's funny what you just talked about. I'm doing a final polish of the book I'm working on right now, the dialogue, and I went back and just reread the first 2 books to see if there's anything I can pull. I love, just like Shakespeare, I love repetition. I love reusing the same metaphors and things throughout the series to hammer home certain things. And in this current book, one of the characters says, a dream is not a window, it's a mirror. And as I was like, all right, and that fit in with the whole thing I was doing with, and then I was reading the book, and I'd forgotten I wrote this. The narration in one of the books says, hope is a waking dream, and if a dream is a window, what will we see looking from the other side? And I was like, oh, happy accident here, because that character is in opposition, you know, to this character who says, no, their dream isn't a window, it's opposite. A mirror. And I was like, again, that muse is like throwing me little, you know, little, here, have this one for free. I didn't plan that, but I'm happy that I went back and found that. And I was like, oh, that's so, and this is something I'm not going to try and hit the reader over the head to remind. Like, I want them to, if they ever are reading it and they, you know, read these things in succession, like, oh, hang on, this one says, you know, it's a mirror. not a window. This one says it is a window. Oh, what's going on there? Like, like these little things that just are super subtle that add to the whole greater tapestry, like whose philosophy is right, who's on what side, that sort of stuff.
And that's very important because a lesser writer would have a hard magic system where one thing is repeated over and over like that. And they try to out technical each other on that one magic system idea, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Everything's about being technically correct within a viewed system. You're not thinking of a system, you're thinking of a philosophy, of a view of something bigger that they're all involved in. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, because it goes back through history.
Yeah.
And there are kind of these different groups that have been essentially at war with each other, kind of, not in like a fighting war, but like they've been opposing each other going back millennia, and they have a very different view of how this ability that some have and better humanity has to tap into the dreams should be handled. And that's really, that cuts the core of what the story is about. That's now we're getting into kind of like the theme and that sort of thing of what is, how should this be handled, and that'll be explored throughout the series. And I've already planted all of the main players. I've left it ambiguous who is exactly on which side. Yeah. There's some we've already seen, and when you get into the second book, there's some people who are playing both sides. There's some people who are potentially kind of double agents. And yeah, but that philosophy, that philosophical disagreement underpins the whole thing. So I was super happy to just accidentally have put it in there at this point in time, and actually articulate it in a pretty, admittedly, a pretty subtle way.
So walk me through this then. How did you go? Like, what research was involved, and what speakings of the muse were involved, going from I want to write about lucid dreams to I want this particular story?
Oh man, that's a big long story that involved hundreds of thousands of terrible words being written.
Well, I mean, the ideas, what did you go from, like something like I want people to be able to sleepwalk, or I want people to like speak like lucid dream, to I'm going to refine this down to it's going to be about this particular character?
Well, I started the world, right? I started with the world, and I built that out as much as I possibly can. You're doing it on a pretty macro scale there.
Yeah.
And then when you're writing a story, you've got sort of certain, how would you call them, abilities and power sets and things like that.
Yeah, like a magic system.
Yeah. And like, how much do I want to really say here? I think I've kind of hinted at it a bit, that there is a connection. We've seen a guy using water. We've seen a guy using fire. You can sort of start to see the first scene, they call the guy the Stone Man. You can sort of start to see a pattern forming here of, and this, we're talking elemental forces that were worshipped, that were lionized and put into stone and everything, going back to the start of civilization. And that all ties into it. So everything does sort of stem from there. And I just wanted to create a sort of a set of abilities that work against each other, harmonize with each other. The rock, paper, scissors game? One defeats the other, but you go in the opposite way. So it's sort of like everything has to work in a kind of a system, like a rotating kind of system.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is. Now, this isn't really anything that's going to be articulated for a while now, but I am dropping all of the underpinnings to this in the story as we go. And then, you know, I have shown as well, okay, there's certain people that have way more abilities than others. There's certain people that are making out like they have these crazy abilities. Maybe they don't. And yeah, you know, obviously, you know, this is sort of like a cool trope in fantasy stories. Like the main character, like Luke Skywalker, is good at things, but doesn't really hasn't developed them yet. And it's that sort of, and as well, he was a good character in that he was the audience's view, kind of looking into this, learning about the Force and everything, you know, and learning about the Empire and everything as he went. So yeah, it's a lot that goes into it, and I think it's pretty unique. I'm sure I have overlaps with other sort of systems and all these kind of things, but I think it's pretty unique. And I think ultimately the kind of message behind it is fairly unique as well, in comics. So I think people are really going to like it when they start to understand how the whole thing works.
What philosophies did you kind of study for this? Because you mentioned a level system, and I assume you didn't mean like a video game, of course. I thought something like hermeneutics or masonry. This idea of like you can ascend and you get more power, or you focus and you learn, and that's how you unlock things above you.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it is knowledge and focus sort of based. But there's also other things that go into it. Yeah, the secret capital plan block. I know, right?
That would be a great twist at the end.
Heart. Hang on, I got distracted.
Sorry.
We were talking about. Oh yeah, yeah. So it really comes down to your kind of openness and your emotional. How do I word this? You've got to allow it in you and you in it, and in a way that is like takes its own toll on you. So that's why, and I'm really getting into some spoiler territory here, but that's why certain characters will struggle, but also every person is unique. Every person manifests certain abilities differently and will have certain strengths. Just like, some people will pick up a basketball and just that's their thing and they're amazing at it. And others will pick up a basketball and it doesn't matter how long they train, they will never figure it out. Some people have the ear for music. I don't have that. I don't know what people are talking about where they can hear notes and then play it. I'm like,
See, I would have guessed you were a musician of some type.
No, I love music.
Okay.
I love it, but I can't do it.
Yep.
I can pick up a pen and draw in ways that other people
can't do that.
other people think that's super mysterious, but for me, it always just made sense. So there's very much that happening in the world too. But again, without touching too much into spoiler territory here, there is a cycle involved in all this, and I've dropped hints to that as well. So there's lots of things that feed into this thing that I'm building.
Another thing that impressed me, and I do it as well. I write a lot of them. That's what's astounded me is most of the characters I write are female. You write female characters very well, and I don't mean that from a '90s feminist critical idea. I'm saying a lot, especially comic book writers, when they write females, you can tell that all they've done is read comics or read manga in particular. What's how do you I don't want to say how do you feel when you're writing them, but like to me it seems it seems very natural to me writing female characters. It almost seems like you can be a little bit more fantastical with them because you can explore a bigger emotional spectrum and approach the world differently. Yep. That makes sense.
I mean, personally, I think I am, my wife might laugh at this. I do think I am an empathetic person in that I can get inside people's heads and feelings
She's like, he's
pretty easily.
pathetic. No,
So
I got
I
you. Yeah.
feel like I do have that ability that maybe
Mhm.
others don't have, or at least I'm just more attuned to it.
Yeah.
That it was never really an issue. And you're right. I don't want to write, um, cardboard cutout, big balloon boobed women. I
They're
don't want
either
to.
that or they're children, basically, like the way they speak and think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and as well, I think I'm, um because I never, well, at least I escaped that kind of really hyper feminist approach to, men are women are just need to be
Yeah.
men essentially. Like I'm completely against that. I think
Mhm.
a woman has her own kind of strength that is not masculine. It's feminine, and and obviously has physical weaknesses,
Mhm.
and that affects everything. So yeah, I just like anything, I just try to make it as realistic as I can according to how I see the world, and it seems to have worked so far. um I've got two female characters in the book. One is highly emotional, but is at the same time detached from her emotions due to the childhood trauma.
Mhm.
um, and that's an issue for her. And the other one is very motherly, very
And see
motherly.
that's a sin of feminism. You can't write a motherly character.
And it's sort of like she has a sort of a big sister, but more motherly relationship with her. And I also have another character that is a little bit more of a trope, but she is not as an important a character, in that she's kind of like she's sort of like a part of a she's a bit more militaristic, but
Mhm.
she also has that childhood thing going for her that sort of has led her to that.
Well,
So
you said something. I'm not. I don't want to interrupt, but you said something pretty profound, and I would be remiss not to go into it. You said I write how I see things in reality, but saying that involves having a level of honesty in yourself about reality to observe it properly. Does that make sense? Because people observe reality all day, every day, and some of them come away as raving lunatics who can't.
well, again, remember what I said? Everything that I've been doing has been leading me to this. So I played poker professionally for about 4 years, I think. And that's where I think my one of my skills was reading people,
Mhm.
reading why are you here? Why are you playing poker? What's your state of mind? What kind of person are you? And when you read people incorrectly in poker, you lose a lot of money. They surprise you and you lose. So I do think that's an actual practiced skill.
Mhm.
On top of that, and I'm not saying I was always like this, when I escaped the, feminist leftist indoctrination side of things that, I think a lot of Australians especially go through in school, I embarked on a journey of discovery. I was in YouTube, just learning about the reality.
Mhm.
I listened, when it comes to women, I listen to tons of women talk about their experiences in life. Um, and I listen to tons of music written by women and sung by women. So
Mhm.
I feel like that all leads into it. And
Yeah.
just I do think, as a general rule, I do try to see the reality of things, and am pretty good at noticing, this is an act, like this guy's putting on a
Mhm.
character, or like, this isn't exactly how he feels and stuff like that. I do feel like I'm pretty good at that,
And
and that's
that,
probably from the poker.
but I think that's important. And I think you're right. I'm gonna say a lot because my brain connects like 14 different things together all in the one at once. So just bear with me. I had a guy on named Brad Kelly who
Mhm.
I'll send a link to you. I'll send you a link and on Twitter. Brilliant guy. He hosts a podcast called Method and Madness where he deep dives into literature and art and all these kind of things. And he's into the esoteric, and I think he does tarot and like lucid dreaming as well. I think you'd really like him. Great guy.
Sounds good.
But and this isn't the self promote. Check out the interview I did with him. He's wonderful. But we were talking about doing a podcast together, going into the deep dive of the feminine side of art, and how it is like that's a primal necessary part of art, even for men. Like you have to be in touch with something there. And what you described, I think a lot of people miss, like with poker and with gambling, that is a highly, and some would even say toxic, feminine trait, to be able to sit in a room and read the intentions and emotions of other people for the sake of winning in a competition against them. That's not physical. And I think that's necessary. I mean, I think that's what a mother has to do. Like back in the day, like you're sensing for danger all the time. Why is this person here? What is this thing? What is this thing doing around my child? I wouldn't call it toxic, but I'm saying it can be if it's applied in the wrong way. I think that's impressive, man. And that's, again, talking about female characters. That's what draws me to writing them a lot, is that you get to kind of get in that headspace of threat awareness and people reading that you don't really get in a lot of other places.
Yeah, it is different, and it's going to be interesting with the character Ella, the main character, who at the moment is just basically potential. She's done some weird things, but yeah, physically, I mean, she is in danger, in immediate peril. And, she's going to have to learn how to, deal with that and grow and like get it to a point where she no longer is that. So it's going to be like interesting. And the only way that she could do that is with, unlocking the abilities that are sort of latent in her and, within the story. It's gonna make for a fun story, I think.
That's a very powerful trope, I think, because I'm not trying to harp on it, but with the magic system like you've kind of got, that I understand at least, and a female character, especially one with trauma, is you can have this idea of chaos, of uncontrolled potential, that's more common in a female character than in a male character. It's where you get like the Scarlet Witch and Jean Grey, the Phoenix Force. You know what I mean?
Yep, 100%. And there's already a little bit of chaos has sort of burst out.
Yeah.
And it's funny you should use the word chaos, because that word happens a lot in the new book I'm writing. They're talking about this sort of metaphor of the storm.
Oh, nice, like a tempest. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And and it does burst out, in anger and frustration and confusion.
Yeah.
And and you give someone like that a lot of power. It manifests in unexpected ways. And again, sort of leading back to the story, that the old guy, he didn't want to potentially unleash this unexpected, unpredictable power before, it was more developed, before she was a bit more or whatever, like in control, because of exactly that. But the plot happened, and time pressures and stuff, and things had to happen, and unexpected things happen. So yeah, it is definitely it is definitely fun. I do write a lot of my male characters are kind of a bit more cocky and arrogant. That's sort of much more their trait. I find different kinds of cockiness and arrogance butting into each other is makes for a fun drama.
Oh yeah.
She's not like that at all.
Yeah.
She's kind of the opposite, actually.
That's
I do see that in women too, where they say things like, "Why are you so confident? How do you know?" They don't dive into things because they don't know yet, so that they don't have the confidence. They say things like, "Oh, if only I had the confidence of a man,"
It's like we have two different types of intuition. And that's a very interesting concept to get into, because female intuition is real, and I think it comes from whether a spiritual force or the idea of threat assessment, particularly for children. men also have an intuition. Now ours kind of translates into action quicker, I think.
Yeah.
Is what you're describing, like where that confidence is. I think maybe a lot of male confidence, at least in my life, comes from I don't care. I'm just gonna go do it. Like I'm
That's
not gonna
me.
think about it. I'm just gonna go do it.
That's me. I'll
Yeah.
just do it. What else am I going to do? Just
Yeah.
just give it a go,
So is it confidence or I'm bored and I'm angry and I don't want to think about it?
No, I've had that. I've had that conversation with women when I'm sort of describing doing these things. Like, how did you know that would work? I didn't.
I don't know anything will work. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I
oh
didn't
wow,
know.
I would
I didn't know.
never have the guts to just go and do that. Like, well,
I
sometimes you
didn't
just
know
got to bet on
proposing to
yourself.
you would work.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that is like is men, and I know it is for a fact. I think it's a direct correlation of like testosterone to lack of social, like caving to social pressure. Basically,
Hmm.
it's like the more testosterone a man has, the less he cares what other people think of him. Basically,
Yeah.
so he's more
That is very
likely.
true. Women are
Yeah.
very communal. They do
Hmm.
care deeply. I mean, I've noticed that in my real life. They care deeply what other people, especially what other women think of them.
Yeah. Well, that's a survival
Um,
trait, I guess, in the tribe. If
yeah,
you got to be around each other all day, every day, raising kids, you've got to have a good reputation with each other.
yeah. Whereas I'm like, who cares what those
Yeah.
bitches think,
You
They're
say
like,
you
no,
say that
they do.
about your own friends, those guys suck. I don't care what those morons think, but then you
Yeah.
do. I
No,
agree, man. That's fascinating, dude. God, man, I say this like I have like so many guys on here. I'm like, man, I could talk like 6 hours with you on some stupid topics.
yeah, I have the same thing. I don't know if you've talked with Pete Samedi from Alterna.
I've had an interaction with him on Twitter that was good. I was talking with about like his new publishing company or his printing
Yeah,
company. Yeah,
I have the same rapport with him. It's just like, I mean, I feel like I could talk to that guy for hours, just
yeah.
as long as you share similar-ish interests and you find out, oh, you're into this too, you just go at it.
Yeah.
It's good when it's like that.
Well, Michael, I hate to cut it short. I've got to go take care of the kids.
No problem. It's
But
been a great discussion, and it's great to
yeah,
meet you,
man.
Dan.
You too, man. Like I said, not many people in indie comics come highly recommended across the board. I've had no negative feedback from you. Maybe I need to meet some more interesting enemies of yours.
Yeah,
But
yeah. They're out there. They're out there. Well, I know I'm not at war with anyone, and I don't try to be at war with anyone, and that annoys people. I find, there's a lot of pressure to sort of pick sides and go at it, and I'm like, I have very limited energy to fight online wars. Especially when something like happened yesterday. It's like, oh my god, how uninteresting is all this nonsense? You have very limited energy to put into your work, especially when you've got a family and a wife and life responsibilities. So I focus on my book, and that does annoy people, and I get it. They want me to be something that they want me to be, as opposed to what I'm doing. And so usually that's what happens. But also, I don't know, I might just say stupid stuff here and there. We all do.
I'm hoping a lot of that might be dying off. I kind of sense a change, but I think people are tired of the BS. I think people are wanting better conversations, better books, better pizza. Papa
Oh,
John's.
I wish I could have pizza. I'm been on this diet for a year now. I haven't had pizza in a long
Okay,
time.
he said, not yet. Wait till cock to God
Yeah. That's happening tomorrow.
Good luck, man. I will tell you that, like, to your face, like, I'll see how it plays out. That's up to you.
It seems like a good group of contestants.
Yeah.
I was very careful to use the language. It's contestants. It's a competition. We got rounds. They all seem up for it. There's a lot of friendly banter. I'm gonna beat you, that sort of stuff. So, hey, and this was just an idea that I threw out there on a lark. Oh, and it went viral. And I was like, oh my god, everyone's talking about it. So I was like, all right, this could be something. Who the hell knows? At the very least, it should be fun.
And your wife's like, what is he thinking? How's he this confident?
No, she loves this stuff. My wife is a very feminine woman, but she is actually more confrontational than I am by a country mile. So she is up for it, So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I love talking to you, man. I'd like to have you back on. or figure something out. I'd love to have you and Brad and our friend Brody on, and if it's up to you,
Yeah,
I'd love
man.
to
Sounds good.
go into that
Just
kind of thing. I'll send
let
you
me
some
know.
information. Okay.
All right.
All right. Have a good night, man.
Thank you. All right. I'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye.